have a plan. Whenever I have a plan, it's like to escape where I'm at, which is something.
So it's like when you're stressed, you make
anyway.
My plan is to not have a plan.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
whenever I have a plan, it's because I'm like feeling down or something, or trapped is really what it is.
Okay, so him like getting ready to graduate and like trying to reconcile his student debt is maybe him feeling a little bit trapped. And
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
and especially so, like a lot of my friends are graduating right now too, and like sort of the social aspects of everyone like getting ready to go on to the next step before it actually happens, and then like a lot of people are like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, but like it's stressful to be in those social situations where everyone's kind of focused or talking about one thing, and I'll do pretty much whatever I can to like disrupt that, or like not either disrupt like for myself and be like, oh yeah, I'm not doing this thing that y'all are doing, or just like try and not say anything about it, which is more what I've been to.
Because it's honestly like this guy honestly like flies under the radar. So like for example, my INTJ friend that I was talking about like kind of considers this guy to be like a bit of an idiot and like a ditz just because of the way he like relates, and he's like a little bit spacey and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I've had one-on-one conversations with him, and I'm like, damn, this is like the most intuitive, like this guy really gets it. Like he really fucking gets it on like really deep intuitive levels, and there's like symbolic connections and all kinds of shit. They're like really meaningful and deep, but it was all like hidden. It was like completely obscured, and on the surface it was just like this like kind of happy guy that gets along with everybody and doesn't have strong opinions, you know. And it was interesting to see that side of him come out in a one-on-one setting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't really have strong opinions though. That's the other. Like I'll get passionate about arguing certain stances, but at the end of the day, like I won't stick to anything.
Sure. Okay.
So once I realize that, then it's like, oh, there's nothing that I'm like either protecting or not when I'm talking with people. It's all just relative to whatever they're saying.
Yeah, and there's other weird discrepancies too. Like, I know he like really, really dislikes the American Chemical Society, for example, but he's like the treasurer on the student club, and it's not like to subterfuge it. Like, it's entirely just to have a mark on his resume. But he's too afraid to rock the boat that he's just like, I hate them, but I'm willing to like sacrifice that like moral code just to make sure I'm like okay for myself, you know.
That's the NESI fight of like, I can see everything is possible, but I'm just gonna do what everyone else is doing.
Okay, so there's like a conformist element that's like fighting against that.
Yeah, okay. SI is an inferior function. Inverted sensing it's a bit, for lack of a better term. Apologies for using that term.
I mean, yeah. I was like, I'm not offended. I was like, why would I be?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Too much, you know. I don't know. If I were to, that's exactly it right there. Like everything I say, it depends on who I'm around. So to answer your question, yes.
And how funny when I first asked you, you like denied it outright too. It's funny.
Because yeah, I essentially denied it and then redefined everything in my terms, and then just like so that I could agree with you.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's dumb. It's real dumb.
Well, it's not dumb. It's as dumb as like anything else anyone else does. It's just interesting because I didn't, have that perspective. Yeah.
Oh, it is. What's up, other people?
We are.
Boondock Saints. Okay, let's talk about that.
What?
What?
You guys like talked at the same time, so I couldn't like comprehend either statement.
We're doing sign language.
Is there a thing you're pointing at, Chloe, or you're just like seeing something you can't see?
I can't really hear you, Mike.
Oh no, I was referring to the Boondock Saints.
No.
I've yet to see that movie.
I appreciate you admiring looking at my wonderful wall decorations. One of many.
He's guilty. He's so guilty.
Can you
Okay.
hear me, or am I talking to myself?
Anybody else? When I think about you, I talk to myself. Okay, no, that was lame. I'm sorry. My knee just was activated.
Right now we're like mirror images. I'm gonna put on headphones just so because I have you in the Zach. I have you in the top right, and I'm in the top left. So we were doing this, and you were leaning on you went this, and I was leaning on mine like this.
Jump right again. Would have done dog,
Yes.
but he left the game. Wake it.
Oh.
That's right. There's a full moon out tonight. Okay.
What is this chat room, anyways?
I'm here.
I just found it off the YouTube channel.
That's like how 99.9% of people find it.
It's
Yeah,
just like,
I
watch-
kind of like. I don't know what it was that provoked me to like relook this up, because like a year ago I was on the show with Eric, and it was much smaller, like just a one-time thing when I came on, and then like I kind of unsubscribed because I got like way too much spam and like weird videos in my inbox of him just like singing to chickens and stuff, and I was like, what is this? I was like, what? He's like singing to his pet chickens and like random, like his, it's like, because his channel's like a fusion of a blog and then like the actual conversation topics, or a vlog, I should say. And so I kind of like,
It's a direct SI transfer, and it's like,
yeah. And so I kind of like unsubscribed for a while, and I forgot about it. I don't know what it was about today that provoked me. I was like, I need to look it up. And I saw that I was like, well, there's a lot more people. And I was like, oh God, and everyone's involved in some kind of weird drama shit right now, like for some reason. That's the impression I got. But it turns out it's like just him and like like two other people, maybe, but mainly him.
you have an outbreak of drama. Seems to be an outbreak of drama every few weeks, but
He takes such a strong stance and gets so like emotionally like triggered.
I don't think he's mostly triggered. I think he tries to emote triggering without necessarily being triggered for the sake of having a show.
You think that's what it is? Like, I don't know.
Absolutely.
Because I've only
He's
watched some of his
skeptical.
videos. Like, I haven't been like a part of his community or anything.
I'm
It
too
feels kind of dirty
skeptical.
for me to talk about him because I don't even know him. But he puts his life out there, so I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, Zach, you seem like a cool INTP, so
Well, that's good. You got me on a good day.
There's Blanky.
yeah, you don't seem like an evil INTP, but I don't know.
Well, evil INTPs you would never know, right?
There's no evil INTPs. Like historically, there's not really any evil INTPs.
Well,
I don't know. I think it's possible.
see, all the evil INTPs don't get written down in the history books because they're like people like Steve Bannon, like they're like advisors and like
Oh shit!
You
I
guys
think
think-
they're trying to get me. Fuck.
Hmm?
Oh no, I'm flipping out about something.
but it's
I
like
get what
it's
you're saying. Advisors to
like
like-
people that are operating in the shadows that kind of like have influence and are able to peddle it, like probably like bankers, CEO people that there are high performing INTPs. They're kind of rare because a lot of them don't make it through. They don't develop that confidence. And that's something I'm trying to work on. But there are,
becoming an
because
evil.
once you get into a position where people respect your ideas, like you have a lot of flexibility. Because if you're known as like an information and like logistics broker, right, and you have like a lot of connections and stuff, like I think people like oh God, what's his name? I think George Soros might be an INTP.
Yeah.
And like people, and yeah, like that's more on the spectrum of like morally ambiguous kind of.
Well,
I don't know.
ambiguous. How can you be good if you have that much money?
it kind of, it's like at the point
Not
where you're
good because of corrupt, but good because like you're just in this situation where nobody else can understand the things that you do because of the perspective.
right, because of the perspective, and from also like I'm thinking like from a systems analysis point of view, I could see some really harsh moral calculus being done, for quote the greater good. If you're in a position where you have to make that decision, right, you have to do like some kind of moral calculus, and it might come off as quite cold and chilling to someone who didn't understand all the circumstances that you were evaluating.
The funny thing is, though, you're still doing moral calculus.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, there's not that many evil INTPs because, like, no matter how messed up their moral calculus is, they're still doing it. Whereas some people...
But it's also the thing that holds us back from being high achievers frequently, is because it's much easier to be a high achiever when you don't have a regard for other people's like state of things, because you can just like plow through them, and not worry about it. But that's like, you can't do that without feeling shitty about yourself. I feel as like an INTP, you start to, and what happens is you sabotage yourself because you destroy your like entire like emotional basis for moving forward. Like you lose your identity when you do that, and so you can't progress when you like compromise your own core value system. That's how I feel anyway.
I feel like as evil as ENTPs get is like the Joker.
I mean, that's pretty...
Yeah, it is pretty evil. Not from where I stand, but...
It's like, I empathize with the Joker.
Zach, you just come across as a very warm INTP, and that's the thing I've noticed, is that INTPs can be like rational and cold, but at the same time they're very warm about it. Like they have like this warm energy. I don't know how to explain it.
FE fourth function.
Yeah, because there's always this element, like first and foremost, like I am, like I orient all my actions based upon like what I think would benefit a lot of people, and it's tied up with my own ego, right? So for me, it's like my sense of identity is like not restricted to me, myself, and my body. My sense of identity like extends to like my entire sphere of influence and includes like all the things that I'm not aware of that are like other people interacting with me, right? So it's like the aspects of myself that I see in other people are like a part of my own body in a way. So like I can act always in a selfish way and still be altruistic at the same time, because if everybody that I'm involved with is like me, and that's like my sense of identity, then like moving forward, it's like I'm doing things to benefit me, which includes everybody else. But that gets me into trouble because then I neglect my actual physical body, because I'm like being really, really hard on myself because of that, And a lot of it is like, I recognize that part of it is like me trying to justify, because like the idea of me doing things like completely selfishly is like kind of like morally abhorrent to me, but I know that I do it on a regular basis. So part of me is like figuring out a way to like reconcile that, and I understand that that's an aspect of it. But yeah, I don't know. What were you gonna say?
Yes, it's still cool. It's
Yeah.
It's like a cool motivation to have at your core. Like regardless of whether it's selfish or not, that doesn't matter. You're still doing something for other people.
It's what's driving me to do what I'm doing in school and stuff right now. Because like I had a thing that happened when I was in high school. Like when I kind of had this realization where I was like, I must have been like 14 or something like this, and I had this kind of like realization where I actually like saw the interconnectivity between things, and I almost had this like, I almost want to say like a vision, not really like a vision. It was like an active daydream that like really, I was like really late at night. We were like driving on the road, I was sitting in the back seat, and I kind of had this like vision of like where kind of humanity was headed in general, and like what needed to be addressed, and the most pressing issue. And the most pressing issue is the very nature of scarcity itself, right? Because that's what drives all conflict, is scarcity, right? And so that's what drove me. It's like I started to learn more about it, and molecular manufacturing became this big thing, because that's the promise of being able to assemble things from the ground up, just like on the nanoscale. right? And being able to do that and decentralize it would resolve the scarcity problem. But the idea is like, how do we get from here to there, right? And so it took me a long time to figure it out. First, I thought I would have to go into like policy, do some kind of like, so my first major I tried to go for was like interdisciplinary, what was it called? It was like, it's basically just doing like international affairs, kind of like geopolitical focused kind of like major. But then I kind of realized like, man, everyone's so focused on this idea of like a zero-sum game and all this kind of stuff. The idea of like eliminating scarcity is completely foreign to like contemporary like geopolitical like frameworks. It doesn't make any sense to them. So I kind of like went more to the science side of things, more where I felt a little bit more comfortable anyway, and started getting into like, I wanted to learn some chemistry and stuff like that because I felt like that was the area of materials that would deal with like the scarcity issues, and maybe I could actually go into the molecular manufacturing directly instead of just being an advocate from a policy point of view. And I happened to I found an advisor that actually knew a little bit about some nanoscience things, and I started to learn a little bit more about it. And then I discovered, we started doing this stuff we were linking nanoparticles together with like DNA and like forming like little structures and stuff, just kind of by mixing them together in solution, and then imaging them with like an electron microscope kind of thing. And I came across this thing called DNA origami. And it's basically the idea is that because DNA is programmable, and you have like two separate strands, like so you have two separate individual strands of DNA, and then they're like stuck together, right? Each rung of a ladder that you see in DNA is like two bases, right? Which are just like little chemical groups that are on those long chains. And we've gotten to a point now technologically that we can synthesize chains, short chains of DNA, like up to like 300 base pairs, like in a machine. It's actually called, let me send you guys a link. It's called a Dr. Oligo is like an example. And it's basically like a DNA 3D printer thing. And so like you can make like synthetic DNA really quickly. And so I started thinking like you could use DNA in a material role, because the way DNA origami works is it takes advantage of that pairing. And since you can print out like any sequence you want, you can pre-program a structure like in a computer program, and then like come up with all the strands that if put together, when they like anneal, or like all the individual strands come together, they can like form larger structures. So you can form like cubes, you can form like any kind of geometry in 3 dimensions using DNA, and it self-assembles, right? So you add the strands and then heat it up and it automatically forms that object, right? Like any kind of shape you want. And it's called DNA origami. You can look it up. Let me see where the Dr. Oligo thing is. Biolytic. Yeah, these things are crazy. Like the fact that we can print like DNA at this point, most people don't even realize. It's not to the point where you can print out like an entire genome of an organism.
You can do that too, though, right?
Only if it's really small, like a viral thing or like maybe a bacteria or something like that. You could print it out in like segments and mix it together. But the thing is, there's like so many errors, and since it's like synthetic, there's like a lot of biological stuff that is not completely understood. So but the idea is that one thing we were doing in the research we were doing was when we connected the DNA together, right? You could also attach a strand of DNA to like a nanoparticle, and then use like the DNA itself as like a glue to like attach that nanoparticle like to a DNA origami structure or something like that. So the idea is that you could have like a template made out of DNA and then hang any material you want on it. And you could do it like at low temperatures just by heating it up. You wouldn't have to like no stepwise, like you just mix everything together in one pot, heat it up, and it self-assembles many discrete like structures. And so that's kind of like, I was like, man, this is actually something that could go somewhere if developed, because unlike protein folding, everyone in biochemistry is so obsessed with understanding protein folding so they could design their own proteins and stuff like that. But the thing about protein folding is that like protein chains, the way they like form together is like not as straightforward as like DNA, the way DNA binds together, because it like has to do with like if it has to do with like how they relate to the water. So like if they're attracted to the water, they like will separate from each other. But like if they're hydrophobic, they'll like clump together, and like it's all like really complicated, like how the structures form. But you can brute force it if you make a structure out of DNA. But there aren't in nature like any DNA enzymes or anything like that. There's not like, the DNA is just carrying the information that allows those things to be made. Mm-hmm. But from a materials point of view, I was like, well, DNA is like way more controllable because the pairing like overpowers all the other forces that are involved. So you can like predict the structures pretty reliably. And I also I came across this like mathematical object at a math conference. It's called a kaleidocycle. Mm-hmm. And kaleidocycle is like, I have one around here somewhere. Hold on one second. I'll find it.
This is really intriguing to learn about.
Never mind, that could take forever. I'm an INTP, sorry.
I see.
But anyway, like I'll
they're like folded. They've got lines on them.
Or not kaleidocycle. Kaleidocycle. Not a hexaflexagon, a kaleidocycle. I think you're thinking of a hexaflexagon.
No.
There we go. Sorry, it has like old-timey music. You're just gonna have to get over it.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so anyway, this object, it's a three-dimensional object that like folds in and of itself. And the thing is that like, are you guys familiar with what an enzyme is? Sorry, like you might have to mute that, like or something.
I was just seeing what the watch together function does.
Yeah, it all synced up, I guess.
Yeah, and now I lost it. I fixed it back.
So do you guys know what an enzyme is?
Like, as soon as I'm reminded, I will.
Okay, so an enzyme is basically just like a structure that exists, like usually, it's found all over biology. And well, I guess I should start with like a normal chemical reaction occurs when like you have to imagine that like when you're like in water, that you have like a bunch of particles that are flying around that are suspended in the water, right? They can only react if they collide. And the way to do that is to add heat, because what you do when you add heat is you make everything move around at a faster velocity, so the incidence of collisions decrease. That's what happens when you heat something up, right? That's why something is more likely to react when you heat it up. What an enzyme does is it's a structure that floats in there and has really highly specific binding sites for like a specific small molecule, and it has multiple of those binding sites. And what will happen is that the free molecules will be like so attracted to it that they stick in there, and then what the enzyme does is that it like folds, so it pushes them together and it bypasses the energy barrier, so you can have reactions at low temperatures. That's how your body is able to like produce all kinds of crazy shit without you being like 1,000 degrees all the time because of these like enzymes. And so it like saves on thermal energy and like reduces everything. But the thing is that like you have to find them within nature and you have to like sequence them, and it's this arduous process, and no one understands like the full folding process, so no one can design like a synthetic enzyme. But I was thinking, if you took that object and you made it out of DNA origami, and you attached certain nanoparticles to it with certain properties, like let's say magnetic or like electric or conductive and stuff like that, that you could make them cycle using an external field, like a magnetic field, or like, like even like sound waves, like some kind of applied field that would force that object to like oscillate, like if it was suspended in water, right? Then if you had binding sites on those internal parts that clump, like you see how the thing folds like this and like keeps going around, those points where they contact, right, that would be the point at which the reaction would occur. right? So
Oh.
the idea is that you might be able to design a synthetic enzyme like template that would work on that, and then you could custom design binding sites and put them there, and you could custom design enzymes. And if you could do that, it would be a good first step towards allowing for fully autonomous self-assembly systems that allow for the use of multiple materials. Because typically when you do reactions and stuff, you have to take away all the reagents and everything that you were working with out of the solution, and then, you know, filter it out, clean it, and then like do the reaction again, like in a new environment. Like you can't just like continually keep adding stuff because there's too many like complications that can arise like from the reactions and stuff like that. But if all those, you know, if all those reactions only took place at high temperatures and everything was sitting at like room temperature, and you could you had like multiple of these different types of enzymes that were in solution, and each one of them responded to a slightly different field, you could just have everything mixed together and then toggle like each different enzyme in whatever order you wanted to like self-assemble like any kind of structure. You could do like some kind of additive growth. So like the first stage is like the first layer of like stuff, and then, you know, and then you use like a combination of these fields to try and like direct the self-assembly of things instead of doing things from like a top-down method. So like I think it's a dead end when people are trying to like move things atom by atom, you know, with like using like you know, at super low temperatures and like moving stuff around like with electron microscopes and stuff. I don't think that's viable for actually constructing anything, because to construct something atom by atom manually is just like completely out of the realm of like feasible. Like, you know, you have to do something like self-assembly, which is like what life does, right? All of life like self-assembles into existence, and it doesn't take like some architect like individually placing each atom, like, but that's the way like we all have evolved to kind of like think about constructing things.
And we do, and in doing that, we discover certain truths about the way that things self-assemble. But
Right.
I agree with you that it's a
So
terrible.
the thing that's driving me right now is that like, now that I know that that's a possibility and I have that idea, I understand that it's completely non-trivial, and there might be a low probability of success, but I have to pursue it, because if I don't, like, who will? And if someone else did pursue it, and because they thought it was a good idea, it's most likely going to end up in the hands of like a pharmaceutical company that will use it like once or twice and then like suppress it so that it wouldn't allow for, it like wouldn't set it up for the next stage of allowing people to, you know, manufacture their own, like, the idea is to eventually decentralize manufacturing. So you get it to a point where you have like a large self-assembly apparatus like the size of a room, right? And then over many generations, you miniaturize that to a point where someone could have it in their home, right? And the idea is that like, I would like it all to be like recyclable too. So if you have some kind of like digestion system, so when you're done with something you use at home, like let's say it's like simple objects and stuff, when you're like done with them, you could recycle them and reconstitute them into new objects and stuff like that. And it would eliminate like most of the scarcity issues when it comes to like basic stuff. But it has to be handled with care, right? Because if I'm not saying that all of this would like, you know, in the event that all of this like actually occurs and I'm successful in these endeavors, right? Then we're going to reach a point like, if anyone could like produce like an infinite amount of goods effectively on their own, right? We would have like the privacy problem that we have, or not privacy, the piracy problem we have with like digital stuff, but with physical goods. And that would essentially like, you know how it is, like once you can reproduce a file, right? It takes so little energy. It's like practically free to reproduce like an MP3 file or something like that. So the law of supply and demand demands that it's like worth almost nothing. And that's why piracy exists, right? Because it's practically...
But then, like, musicians just go on tour or whatever. People find other avenues. Like
right. But this is like a microcosm of the idea, right?
Yeah.
And so if you apply that, like what I'm talking about is like effectively the digital distribution of physical goods. Yeah. It only works if everyone has like something at home that could synthesize these goods that you're selling. So the best analog I can think of like contemporary technology would be like if everyone had a 3D printer at home. Right, and they all had like an online marketplace where people could like come up with like designs and stuff and like share them or like try and make money off of them, like, and sell them to each other. But once you had the design, you could print as much of that thing as you wanted. It's just not like something you would sell, you know. It's just like something you could use for yourself. Yeah. Like that would be like a modern day analog of what I would like to see.
And like that's going to be something that would disrupt and not work within the system.
Well, you've already seen like 3D printing technology, like a lot of manufacturing, because it already threatens to decentralize manufacturing in its current state, and it's just like basic plastic goods, right?
Yeah.
So you have like the petroleum industry and all these other, they're like, we want to control, or not the middlemen, not the actual petroleum industry, but the people that, manufacture the plastic products and stuff. Like, they don't want to see 3D printing get off because they want to be able to manufacture in their own little factories like cheap plastic stuff and sell it at a huge premium, when really it could be super cheap, and then people could like melt it down and recycle it, and like no one would have to spend any money at all for like silverware or like plates. Like, that technology exists now, but it's being suppressed. Right?
Plates are like 88 cents at Walmart.
Yeah, I mean that's also a factor. Like, it's the labor is so cheap, and like but
it's sort of like
it would be even cheaper if you bought just the plastic in bulk. It would just be like a few cents, right? If it was just like things that right now. But the problem with 3D printers is that like you pretty much have to print with like one or two materials, and it's like mainly plastic. You can't make like a multi-composite object or anything like that.
I think they're actually working on doing more with 3D printers besides just working with plastic. Like, I think they're actually
there's titanium ones and all other kinds of various sizes with like different materials. It's there's lots of stuff going on in that area, but the thing is that the limitation I see with all of that is it's all top down, right? It's like a crane assembling things like bit by bit, whereas like self-assembly is like way more efficient, right? It's like how a tree grows, right? Which is like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's like an extreme example. It's like extremely complex self-assembly.
So
right?
Where like self-assembly goes from the bottom to the top.
Yeah, bottom up versus top down. Yeah.
Okay.
But the idea is that like I want to be able to like direct the self-assembly, so you can't just like let it go free because you're trying to constrain it to form certain objects. So you have to like manipulate certain parameters in the environment to try and direct the self-assembly. So it's like directed self-assembly, not just But anyway, that's obviously something like this is the kind of thing where I would need to secure like a steady source of funding and have like many years to work on it and have to work with other people because it's like way too much work for an individual to do alone. The problem is like, how do I pursue that without someone sniping it off of me? You know what I mean? Someone with more resources that has like a PhD or something, they could more easily adapt and like learn this stuff quicker than I could.
I'd like to point out a flaw with something. Like, you're saying this, you're telling us this idea, and you're telling the idea, you're communicating the idea via
okay,
the
but here's the
internet.
thing. I didn't tell you the stuff that would actually make it work. I just told you the kaleidocycle, DNA origami. Like, there's a few things, like certain aspects of the DNA and other things that I know about. Because like there's one problem with this is that DNA is pretty floppy, so it wouldn't make a very rigid thing. But I have a solution for that I'm not going to reveal, for example, and like other stuff like that. Because also, if I was going to file a patent, you would have to like have enough stuff to get a patent, right? But like skunk works of other companies, like if they picked up on it, they would try and like work on it and stuff like and make it different enough from the patent, So I have to make sure that I don't reveal the stuff that would actually make it functional, just like the general idea. But yeah, because you have to be able to collaborate with people too. You can't operate in a vacuum, otherwise you're going to make mistakes and like waste like years and years and years, if you don't collaborate with people. So you have to like strike a balance, I've been talking with.
Funny, it's like you're talking about it on a place where it's full of people who are more likely to understand it, but absolutely less likely to do anything about it.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the fact that it's on the internet now, and I think this does. Is this the room that records the thing?
No, it'll be okay. It's not. It's not like.
Yeah, but you realize that it's
not like the
recording
Illuminati is like stalking the
and
internet.
kind of sort through the garbage.
Maybe.
Yeah.
It's kind of one of those things that like, why would anyone take my idea? I'm still an undergraduate, like it's one of those things where it slides under the radar until,
because you can make a lot of money off of it.
Also, most ideas just don't get done.
Yeah. People just like sit on a patent and just hope that they can someday make money off of it,
Yeah, most people want to do their own ideas too, or if they don't have them, there's plenty of other ideas to steal. And if they do steal your
There's no shortage of ideas right now.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just paranoid.
But also the other thing that I like, there's a lot of things that would need a lot of effort to work out. Like for example, the actual folding pattern in order to get that object, because it's really hard to get more than a 4-way junction out of DNA. It's really, really difficult. So there'd have to be a clever workaround. So I'm like confident that it's like enough work that like I have about 10 years leeway before someone like kind of just stumbles upon it like through natural like processes I've estimated. You know, it's just like kind of a matter of time with all of these things, you know. So I figured, you know, comfortably I've got about 10 years before until I have to get that patent. Hopefully I get it sooner than that, but I'm not clever enough right now to navigate that, and I would need to hire a patent lawyer and all that kind of stuff, and I have too much debt. Like there's first steps that need to be taken.
Yeah.
But you know, that's kind of what's driving me right now, and it keeps, you know. But the thing is, I've kind of been neglecting my own health, so I need to focus on. I need to make sure I have like a good rock for myself, because you know, there's no way, like this is a long shot, right? And there's no way it's going to happen unless I'm like sculpt myself into the paragon that's like perfect for, you know, bringing something like manifesting and something like this into reality, which is going to be a huge challenge for me as an INTP, right? I need to work with people that can help me more with the actual like staying on track side of it and stuff like that, which is why I know I can't like do it alone. Especially because of that. Yeah. So, yeah.
Have you written out like all of your ideas and everything that you have figured out thus far?
I'm gonna put together like a research plan or something. A lot of it's still in my head right now, but a good amount of it is like in like literature review and other stuff that I've done for like other school projects. Like we were doing something like I learned about all this DNA origami stuff like while we were getting ready to like, I was like writing a grant and other stuff, like, and so I have like all of that aspect of it, but most of this is like in my head. But I am going to put together like a research plan and stuff and float it through a couple of people that I trust within the school. Like, you know, the older people that I know wouldn't be able to do it because they're going to die. Honestly. Don't tell the idea to anybody that could actually complete it who's like younger than 40, right? That's like but I can be like really detailed with like this like 80-year-old biochemist that has like minor dementia and like is hard of hearing. Like I can totally he's also like really
beautifully well thought out.
He's also like really, really smart, which makes it perfect. And he's always like, you gotta be careful who you say these things to. And I'm like, I am, you know, like I'm not going to tell him like I know you're going to die soon. Like no, obviously I can't say that, but yeah. That's awful. It sounds awful now.
No, sounds spot on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say. ETB might actually say it though. They would be like, "Well, I know you're going to die soon, so I'm going to talk to you."
I don't know if I would definitely say that.
And like because I asked him advice about it too. And it's like because he's operated under like NDAs like from companies to like work on stuff. And I was like, how do you like? Can you give me some advice about how you actually like properly like make sure you get your funding and like can pitch the idea without someone sniping it off you? And he's like, well, very carefully, obviously. And he's like, you just reveal just as much that you have to get people to understand what your idea is about and to like inspire them to be interested in it, but not enough that they could go off on their own and then like make up all the time that you've, you know.
That's like, a stressful life you live, dude.
What?
That's a very good approach to it.
Yeah. Just enough, you know.
Totally. I just like
enough.
But it's going to be hard because, you know, I get so excited about like an idea that like I'm going to have to watch myself. Like someone over drinks, you know, is going to be like, oh, so like tell me, like what's your strategy? How are you going to, you know, increase the rigidity of your structure, you know? And I'm going to be like, oh, well, you know, I got to be careful.
Yeah. So don't consume any alcohol. Don't go to a party where you're talking to these people and like they have alcohol. Don't like drink all the alcohol.
Oh, just be mindful, you know, or something like that.
I remember
Yeah.
reading an interview or hearing about an interview with a guy who does Wired magazine. He's like, yeah, when I have an idea, I tell every person I know that might do it, and then if none of them do it, then I do it.
Yeah.
Like if none of them think it's a good idea to do, then I do it.
Interesting.
And I was like, I like that approach.
So it's yeah, but for this idea, I wouldn't want to do that because it's like such a high value.
I know
idea.
it makes sense. 'Cause that's a career path for you, but I just hope that
Because like for me, like I kind of it seems like I would probably be like my business plan. Like I would probably have to like create a company to do this. You know, once it was developed, right? And then I would have to like make money to build capital to develop the more deeper self-assembly stuff, right? And I would have to like, and you have to like, hire lots of people, and it would take a long time, you know. And that would be like end game. You know,
Yeah.
I'm prepared to take it as far as I possibly can, you know, given the limitations that I'm just a guy, right? So I have the contingency planned out for like however many years that I'm like alive, right? But it's not necessarily like, you know, there's gonna be roadblocks and stuff, and there's gonna be all kinds of things that I'm not anticipating, of course, and like, you know, the shit that happens when you do anything.
Yeah, I have a friend whose dad is a INTP, and he runs like a big research lab. And
Really?
He's like he's probably 60 plus now, and he's like things are like just clicking in like the last 10 years or so for him.
Yeah.
It makes sense that you would have a plan because
it's very
build a company and
here's the thing about like I've talked to like other INTPs too, and like the thing is that like we have plans that extend like in contingencies that we happen to become immortal. Like like we have like contingencies for like, well, if we happen to like hit the singularity and we end up like, you know, each year the average life expectancy increases more than a year, right? So like I think it was like last year life expectancy increased by like 0.6 or 0.7 years, right? Eventually it's going to hit 1 maybe. You know, but it doesn't really make sense until the rest of the developing world catches up. Like it's a large statistic. But anyway, like eventually, like, you know, that could be a contingency, and so I think about that kind of shit too. Like in other INTPs, like there's so many, like so many crazy fucking shit. You just be laying at home, like planning out like galactic conquest or something. It's like, you know, it's insane. But I'm happy to put it to something that's like actually maybe achievable, you know, rather than some, you know, grand weird fantasy thing, you know. Like,
but if there was a zombie apocalypse, what would you do? And then what would your plan be?
Well, there's lots of munitions at my parents' house. That's probably where I'd go if I could get there. And it's up on the mountains, and it's like in a choke point, and there's like you could easily knock down rocks and block off the entire access to the valley, either from like PMC, like military or like peacekeeping forces, or the zombies. So I think that'd be the best spot. You could hide it. You know, my dad's a pretty good shot. We go up in the cliffs of Redstone and just, you know, snipe them all or something.
I think I would go to an antique store because there's like there'd be the most fun weapons to have would be like old lamps and stuff, and like
the one thing that would be difficult about that plan is we don't have hydroponics or anything.
I just go to NASA and then I just leave the planet and then like try to destroy the planet.
That's pretty good.
Interesting.
But
Good
then
luck with
like
that.
try to gather like all the other scientists and all the other like much more
You know,
advanced
I think the
people.
closest thing we would ever experience to a zombie apocalypse would be like if some nukes got dropped and those weird like scary husks that everyone talked about like in Hiroshima and stuff, like people that survived the blast that like had all their skin blasted off and they're just like walking through the streets and stuff.
I don't like that.
Yeah, I know. And that's like that's the real thing. It's like that's why I think nothing's going to happen with North Korea is because everyone realizes it's like, oh, we live in an age where like everyone has cameras. Like if anything in if anyone gets nuked, right, there's going to be cell phone footage of like burnt corpse zombies like walking over the DMZ and shit. Like that shit is like, no, you know, that's completely untenable. I have a feeling that it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I hope so.
I mean, the whole thing with North Korea right now is like really like a litmus test for mad logic, you know, mutually assured destruction, and to see if it still holds or not.
Post Modernism. We got a president. We've got our first postmodernist president. Anything possible.
Postmodernist. Interesting description.
Yeah. I've seen like an article on why Trump is like how essentially his whole campaign was like postmodern in like sort of just like he was like shitty postmodernism where you're just like,
shitty postmodernism.
Or like if you've ever watched videos of Milo Yiannopoulos or whatever, he just pokes holes in people's logic. Like,
oh yeah. I mean, I never really followed that guy, but like I saw like when all the scandal shit happened and stuff.
Yeah, it's without establishing like your own logical system. So it's just like
there are more productive things to do than like watch Milo Yiannopoulos.
I agree, but it was research, so I had to.
Do you think he's in the NTP?
I don't think so.
I think he claims to be ENTP, but he's really just trying to make an excuse for his narcissism. But that's just me.
I don't know.
I don't know. I've spent some time on it. He's got some like FI stuff, but he definitely plays a character, which makes it really hard.
I think he might be like just a core 4, or maybe like a tri-type 8-4 or something. ENTP.
I
could see that.
Yeah. Or maybe he's like an ISTJ, but he like puts on the act of the ENTP.
He might be an 8-4-5 actually. They're all about like what makes people tick. That tri-type in particular.
All right, now I'm back to watching Milo Yiannopoulos videos. It's so hard because they're all staged interviews, and there's not really any of them like off the like not being
right.
The ones with him with Joe Rogan, I don't think those are staged. Because Joe Rogan challenges him too much and makes him obviously uncomfortable. So I don't think it could be staged completely at least.
I don't know. You know, like
planned personalities questions are different than staging. But yeah, sorry, continue.
He makes all of his money basically on just being a controversial person. And the thing is, he made himself valuable to political, activists on the right simply because he made himself. He sculpted himself into the perfect tool to attack identity politics just by his very existence.
He's like, I'm a queer.
And he knew it, right? And he knew it, and he did pay the consequences of getting involved in politics. Obviously, like the character assassination was real. Like it was unbelievable when I saw that happen. Because I looked at the context of like the supposed pedophilia comments and stuff. It was like him talking of like he was the victim. Right, and he was like trying to explain how he had internalized like his relationship with older men when he was like a teenager, and that somehow it's like he endorses pedophilia. They fucking eviscerated him.
Yeah,
but that's political warfare.
How can he see how people are gonna react to the things he says, but then not predict that they're gonna interpret and twist his words in like a very negative way?
It was actually something that.
I
think it was actually from an interview that happened months earlier. It was just drudged up, and because the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, all these groups have the ability to just publish news. It makes it appear like it was a recent event, and I don't know. It was something that maybe he wasn't back then, and he obviously wasn't worrying about it, and then something like that, I guess. But like I said, I never really followed him. I just learned about it after the fact. So
that actually does sound like NI ignoring, which is an any dom thing.
Yeah.
He's FI though. He's using FI.
There's no way he can't be. Okay, so he's obviously an any dom. That means that he would be polar TI.
Not
necessarily. That means like he would be an ENFP.
If he was an ENFP, he would be polar TI.
I could see. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of. I think Zizek as well. I don't know what he is, but I think he might be an ENFP, and he's a similar character just on the left, where he just says inflammatory stuff and then makes a career out of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like his arguments are. I mean, I've seen a very limited amount of interviews, but I don't know. It seems pretty like he doesn't say things without being able to defend them, which doesn't seem, for the most part.
Yeah. I mean, he also, like, you know, yeah, I could see him as I don't
He's
know.
quick on his feet to, like, deconstruct what
It's the
someone
same
said.
thing I did last time I read up on it, and I was like, I don't care, but I'm, like, pissed about it.
Yeah, I hate that typing people has become, like, not being able to type someone frustrates me as much as it does. Like, not being able to put something in a box, like, I shouldn't be that way, but...
Yeah,
I just
like,
noticed something funny. If you search INTP on Google, like with your cache like cleared or whatever, 'cause I use like Startpage, which is effectively just Google where everything's like always cleared. If you search INTP, like one of the second results is like famous people, INTP famous people. And I wonder how much of that is from people searching, like, because talking with famous people has so much like INTP.
oh, yeah.
Because I know people always search just for all the types, like, oh, famous people, and then like, you know, it's just like, you know, like, oh, Albert Einstein, like, you know, the list of the famous people for the respective types. But I wonder how
Celebrity types is, like, probably the most popular site without any real, like...
celebrity types. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder
Like,
how much
when
of
you
that
search
is
famous
talking
people.
with famous people.
Oh,
Well, what do you think like the community like impact of this like group is? Like how many people do you think are actually like involved in the community that aren't participants? Just out of curiosity, like what do you think?
Well, I guess they wouldn't be involved. They would just be observers, and they would probably gain from the videos, depending on which video, because a lot of it is like, in a weird way, some like inside scoop. Like, you have to really like take bits and pieces of videos, like when Eric's talking, because his NE is going all over the place, and like you can follow him, but it's like he's not getting his points. Really.
Yeah, it can kind of be like a bunch of like disparate things sometimes. It seems like when you're just watching like, you know, one or two videos, kind of have to get used to like what he's trying to do.
I don't know if any other INTPs have this.
Yeah, actually, now I search in Google. I just straight up search INT famous people, and yeah, nothing about this shows up anywhere. So never mind. Not yet.
Like, I have a bit of a gripe about like INTP videos on YouTube. Like, it seems like they're like
pretentious. They kind of start to get like
they're like, oh, it's so hard for me being so smart. Like,
there's like
literally like
there's like this weird reverse victimhood thing. But it's more like high school aged INTP, I feel, because it's like a rough time for INTPs.
Dude, if your 20s are considered high school, most of them are like in their
young college,
early 20s, I would say. But
I could definitely feel that. Like, there's an element of like, you know, you've had a hard time, you've had like no social success for the most part, and then still you're like kind of overcompensating and coming up with like it's like it's supposed to be my time now. I'm like a super secret genius, you know, and like all this other kind of stuff. Like it's a recoil from like a life of like uncertainty that suddenly has like, oh, it looks like I'm actually a powerful individual with very good analytical skills. I can't believe how valuable I am. I used to think I was just a weirdo, you know.
These people are so fucking boring. And a lot of times they're just very good at retaining information and then relaying it in a way
I think some of them aren't even I think like there's kind of like a little bit of mysticism surrounding INTJs, INTPs. Like people kind of like see them as these like
they romanticize them, definitely.
Yeah, especially like Reddit types, you know, that are like so focused on like these like logical thinkers and all this, you know, it's like
I think a lot of INTPs are actually ISTPs that don't know that they're...
It's a really common mistype, especially if people are taking the test in their like 20s. They're going to be developing their third function more. And I read this thing that's like specific to ISTPs called the WTF years, where they go into the TINI sort of like grip thing, and they get like really in their heads, and they're like, I'm so intuitive, and a lot of them will test this out.
But when I see those like solo videos where it's in like INTP like putting their life out there and like talking about all these things and how their life is hard and explaining stuff like, and it's just like just them, and it's almost like this exercise in narcissism. Like, I mean, I do experience that sometimes when I'm like, if I have had like a long period of like not having like attention, and somehow like for the first, like when I first came to college and I like started having like lots of sex, for example, I started acting like that a little bit, you know, and until I kind of like normalized, right? That's
you
like,
weren't used to like the physical attention, kind of.
yeah,
So
and it like takes you by surprise because it's totally like not an internal like thing. It's like an external like sensory thing, and like, you know, and you start to like build confidence. You start to get a little bit cocky, and that gregarious side of the playful gregarious side of the INTP kind of grows a little bit out of control. I don't, you know, and I can see how that kind of manifests in a little bit of narcissism too. Like if you're having successes, but it always kind of like checks itself, at least for me. Like eventually you're kind of like, you know, that doesn't feel right, you know. Like,
yeah, I guess
I mean, surely there are like narcissistic personality disorder INTPs, you know, like there's all kinds of variations, I guess. But
I mean, this has been kind of a point of discussion or topic of discussion in the past like couple days, but like negation as far as INTPs go and how good they are at it, you know. I out of principle I kind of just have used negation to any sort of admiration or compliment toward
like,
me, you know, because I don't want any of that to happen at all. Like I already,
it's like you prefer the neutral environment, like the state of balanced equilibrium, rather than one where you're like being pulled like with extreme praise or extreme criticism, because it makes you like.
Well, I just know that the come down is like really hard, or like I know that like I don't know, I feel things very intensely, so I don't really want to be either, because they're both too intense.
Yeah, and that's how I also can tell when someone's like not an INTP. It's like, INTPs just like don't have feelings. We just like don't experience it. I was like, no. If you're an INTP, you know that you fucking just are blocking that shit up, like bricking it down. You know, like it's not.
Yeah, most of your
and the reason you're doing that is because if it bursts through that wall, like, you know, it's going to be bad. But obviously that's like a wrong approach, obviously, because it makes it worse. But that's like what we tend to do before we become a little bit more mature. You know. And it's still hard,
I definitely went through a period of like not having feelings for a while, but it wasn't comfortable because I knew that
it was like a forced. It was because here's the thing: like at first, it starts off with just trying to deal with the negative emotions, but you soon realize, like I had a realization at a certain point that by doing that, you actually cut off all of them. There's no way to selectively control which emotions. Like the only mechanism we have, it seems, is one that's like completely isolates like all of them, and that's why, you know, the flat affect thing is like a result of that.
Yeah, you can't feel positive or negative emotions.
Right. Even though you really just want to deal with the negative ones, you end up cutting them all off, you know, and then you start to... Yeah.
Are you a dickhead? Yes. You might be an INTP.
ENTPs are way more dickhead-ish than...
No, we're just more vocal than you. You're way more of a dickhead. You just don't talk about it.
Wait. No,
part of a dickhead is being vocal about it.
Hold on. Ace, you can't speak for ENTPs because you have expressed before that you simply just don't know what the fuck you are. So, I'm just saying.
Damn, you just got schooled by a TI polar.
First of all, no, I didn't. All right. You fucking peanut. No, I didn't say that. I said several people had different ideas of what I could be. And second of all, I just said that I got typed by like 5 people who know what the fuck they're talking about. So shush. Go back to your blanket and your fucking fan.
But then, what type are you? Like, do you have a definitive
ENTP? How many times?
Are
you sure?
Obviously, a fucking ENTP.
I'm gonna have a fucking stroke.
Do it.
How are you so definite about it? Like, how are you so absolute?
I'm not.
He's just going off of like the demonstrable evidence that's been presented to him, I think.
He's so positive that he's positive of being an ENTP in a way that only a true ESTP could be.
I just went to this tiny chat group.
Which one?
Woo! 21